Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, June 21st, 2016. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On the roll, Supervisor Avalos. Avalos present. Supervisor Breed.
Here.
Breed present. Supervisor Campos.
Present.
Campos present. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen present. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell present. Supervisor Kim. Kim present. Supervisor Marr. Marr absent. Supervisor Peskin.
Present.
Peskin present. Supervisor Tang.
Present.
Tang present. Supervisor Weiner. Weiner present. Supervisor Yee.
Here.
Yee present. Madam President, there is a quorum.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Can you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any communications?
Yes, Madam President. I am in receipt of a communication from Supervisor Eric Marr dated June 17, 2016, requesting to be excused from today's meeting since he will not be in attendance.
Colleagues, is there a motion to excuse Supervisor Marr, moved by Supervisor Farrell, seconded by Supervisor Campos? Colleagues, can we take this without objection? Without objection.
Community, for the Chinese community, and for the Latino community, not the BAR, not Singtel, not El Reportero. So there are issues with this process, period, and we fixed that in committee by including those publications that actually are focused on our communities, not removing SF Weekly, but adding. In terms of the Chronicle and the Examiner, the Chronicle did state during public comment in committee that they received no notice to bid, and that they bid when they learned of it, which was after the fact. Obviously, we were not part of that process, but that is what the Chronicle stated. And I think that, I don't want to speak for the whole committee, but I can speak for myself, that for both of these items, I would rather be a little more liberal about including periodicals than excluding, with the ultimate goal being to try to get these notices as broadly disseminated as possible. And so if we're using both the Examiner and the Chronicle, and then some of the more specific community newspapers, I think we achieve that. But the process as a whole is problematic, and I will just state that for the record.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiner. And I just want to add, the process as a whole is definitely problematic with regards to some of the very grassroots newspapers and the barriers that those particular newspapers have to jump over in order to be considered is definitely problematic, and we should look at the process. But in the meantime, I don't necessarily believe that we should slow down moving forward with this in order to make sure that we are actually advertising the kinds of things that we need to advertise and get out there to the public. As much as the process clearly is broken, it doesn't mean that we should stop it overall. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, Madam President. And I echo Supervisor Peskin's concerns overall, as well as Supervisor Weiner's comments. You know, this process itself, just to give you one example, we score them on many different topics. Originally, when this was brought up, it was, I believe there are 4 printers in the city of San Francisco, and now there are only one. There's only one. And technically, every single person except for the Examiner in any of these is non-responsive because they don't print in San Francisco, but especially many of these small newspapers can't afford it anymore because they're higher cost. So I would just say, from my perspective, I think without a doubt we should be inclusive rather than exclusive. Obviously different reading audiences, but we want to have a broad reach as a Board of Supervisors when we notice things. I agree we want people to play by the rules for sure, but I think this is a time, and I'm glad to hear my colleagues comment on this, having gone through this the last 3 years at Budget Committee, and we go through this rigmarole every single year, that we actually might have some momentum to actually change the process so we can have a true and fair evaluation, and particularly in the community outreach papers that we have true representation. I mean, that the BAR wasn't selected for the LGBT community, or son. I mean, it just didn't make any sense at all what the outcome was. So I'm very happy to support what came out of committee with the notion that we will be looking at this going forward.
Thank you. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you so much. Supervisor Farrell, before you're happy to support it, hold on, listen to my concerns, because I'm reading this, and I remember the past 2 years having questions about the entire process, and perhaps we will have the wherewithal to deal with it this year. But I have a problem with what came out of committee, particularly the Potrero View, which is a new publication. I'm familiar with the Potrero, and I'm familiar with the Bayview. The Potrero historically covers Potrero Hill. Just recently, barely started covering Dogpatch, but has not done an adequate job, a very good job, when it comes to covering the south side of the hill, number one, let alone the entire Bayview community, let alone even Visitation Valley. I checked in with my colleague, Supervisor Kim, to find out if she had heard of the Potrero View, and she hadn't. Don't want to put words in her mouth. I'll let her certainly speak for herself. But they do not cover the Mission Bay or the Soma neighborhoods. So I am actually going to be voting no on this, and I hope that colleagues will vote this down with me. This is actually flawed and has gotten
as reflected in the general plan amendment, will allow us to create more housing overall. I just have to say, I know that Supervisor Peskin and Supervisor Marr have competing legislation, the so-called density done right measure, and I don't agree with that. I think that that is a dramatically scaled down piece of legislation, and the so-called density done right legislation would result in dramatically fewer units being produced, and would make it much harder, longer, and more expensive to create those affordable units. As I understand it from information we received from the Planning Department, and the Planning Department can correct me if I'm wrong, Supervisor Tang's program will produce approximately 8,000 units of affordable housing, whereas the so-called density done right proposal will produce something like 100 units of housing. And we actually obtained a map from the Planning Department indicating that vast swaths of potentially developable area for affordable housing would simply be off limits, period, under the so-called density done right proposal. And so there's not even it's not even a close call. Supervisor Tang's legislation will allow us to create thousands and thousands of new affordable units, whereas density done right will result in the creation of de minimis, almost no new affordable units. And Supervisor Tang's proposal will allow those units to be produced in a reasonable process. The so-called density done right will make it take longer, be more expensive, and be more difficult. You know, at some point, we either want more housing and we want more affordable housing, or we don't. And we have a choice here today and through the process as it goes forward. I'm going to come down on the side of more housing. Having average rent of $3,500 a month in this housing crisis is not acceptable, and we need more housing. We need it now. This is one step that will get us more housing, and we should approve it. So
Boarding airplanes, but we cannot prohibit them from buying automatic assault rifles. It is absolutely crazy. And as Congress continues to fail us, and the Republicans in the Senate last night failed our country to act at all, I do believe it is up to us and local governments to do all that we can to promote gun safety. And I want to thank Supervisor Avalos. A few years ago after Sandy Hook, he actually proposed a resolution that was unanimously passed by this board that I am reintroducing today, because I don't believe our city should be in the business of investing in companies that enable senseless gun violence. So I am introducing a resolution urging our retirement board, and I want to acknowledge the retirement board's president, our colleague Supervisor Cohen, to immediately divest from companies that participate in the firearm and ammunition manufacturing business. Divesting from these companies should send the message that San Francisco is and will continue to fight for common sense gun safety policies that will protect public safety and save lives. Currently, our retirement system has just over $1 million in investments in 3 different companies in the firearm and ammunition manufacturing business. In the wake of mass gun violence, a number of municipal retirement funds, including the California State Teachers Retirement System, or CalSTRS, and the country's largest pension fund, our own California Public Employees Retirement System, or CalPERS, have voted to divest from investments in firearms and ammunition manufacturers, and we need to follow suit here in San Francisco. One of the most powerful statements you can make is with your checkbook, and I believe our pension system checkbook should not be supporting companies that are in this business. Public divestment campaigns are a powerful tool for creating public policy change. We have done it here in San Francisco in the past, and I believe we need to do it again now. It's time to call the question once again. We cannot continue to see these types of violent acts occur across our country with nothing done about it. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Farrell. Supervisor Kim. Thank you. Supervisor Peskin. Supervisor Peskin? Thank you. Supervisor Weiner? Thank you. Supervisor Yee? Supervisor Avalos?
Thank you. Just piggyback on Supervisor Farrell's call for divestment from gun manufacturers. This is something that the Board of Supervisors had unanimously approved about 3 years ago, closely after Sandy Hook. I authored and the board unanimously supported this resolution. And there's a real problem with SFRs, with the San Francisco Employment Retirement System, not carrying out what we have called for in terms of divestment from not just guns, but also fossil fuels. Have been very slow, dragging their feet and making it happen. And I know there's desire on the actual commission to do the work, but staff have also been very, very difficult to work with to move forward on these priorities that the Board of Supervisors have set up. And whether there's real concurrence around divestment from fossil fuels, that certainly, we voted unanimously on that, but clearly guns are something that there's even more universal support beyond the Board of Supervisors, of course, that we shouldn't be investing our public dollars at 5825 Mission Street. That's in the outer Mission, 5825 Mission Street. And the burial for Mr. Brown will be at Woodlawn Cemetery, Ivy Garden, 1000 El Camino, Colma, after the funeral service. And then the community will be gathering for repast at Dominic's at Oyster Point. If people have cards to send the family, they can send them to Inner City Youth, care of Brown Family at 96 Broad Street in San Francisco. And they're also requesting that if people have pictures or video, and there's many video and photos of Mike Brown and his work in the community, to send them to MikeBrownFamily@gmail.com. This is a huge loss, and worked many years with Mr. Brown, making sure that his services could expand, and working closely to make sure that young people had real access to opportunity in his district. And for Black History Month in, I think it was 2011, I did honor him here. So he's one that's been very close to my office, and it's a great loss, and very sorry for his family. The rest I'll submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Madam President, that concludes our roll call for introductions.
Thank you. And thank you, Supervisor Avalos, for the in memoriam for Mike Brown. I've known him for many, many years. He was a true champion for the community and for young people all over the city. He is definitely going to truly be missed in the community. And please add my name to the in memoriam. Thank you. With that, Madam Clerk, can you please read public comment?
Item 35 is public comment. At this time, the public may now address the entire Board of Supervisors for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board, to include the minutes and items on the adoption without reference to committee calendar, items 36 through 38. Public comment is not allowed when an item has been previously subject to public comment at a board committee, as in the case with the items on consent, new and unfinished business, or the committee reports, items 1 through 33. Pursuant to the board's rules of order, direct your remarks to the board as a whole, not to individual supervisors, and not to the audience. Speakers using translation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time. If you would like to display your document on the overhead projector, please state such to SFGTV and remove the document when the screen should return to live coverage of the meeting.
First speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisor. Andrew Yeber, Chinatown Missionary Officer. One should observe one's position for taking on daily works of cultivation and pathways with good discipline. With virtues of humanity, love, and mercy, one leads on a destiny of progress for bright future. One should know of heaven and destiny in order to take on life pathway with wisdom. To hold on heavenly true heart for cultivation and to apply heavenly true self of mighty nature for pathway would have true success for one's professional career. The natural heavenly laws for reward and punishment means we should accomplish more good deeds and avoid wrongful behaviors. Government policies should lead on direction of complete perfection of universal laws for the human civilization in developmental progress in good proportion and balances. Political leaders must seek daily new improvement for one's virtue and methodology, a principle with wisdom for the worthy rescue and protection. One should alternate one's self-nature and destiny to the point of 100% in order to maximize true studies on the daily working pathways, so one can make sure of good success without any missing and losing grounds. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Thank you, President Breed and all the cabal. My name is Christopher Dahl, and I live at 6th and Howard, 10 blocks and less than 40 years from sea level. I rise to comment on seeing the obvious. I've recently come across a new phrase. It speaks to so much that I see happening in our world today, I have to share it. The phrase is cognitive miser. You know, a miser like Scrooge. It's about people who don't want to spend any more calories than they really have to on their thought process. If you ask, and I have a perfect illustration of it, if you ask a group of people to say how many, that is, what fraction of English words end in ng, people will come back with some number. And if you ask how many English words end in ing, they'll come back with a much, much larger number, even from the same people you just asked about ng. Why? Because it's easier to stop burning calories once you realize that it doesn't sound at all like English, so there can only be a few words that end in ng. But ing rings and sings in the memory, and the number mounts because people will eventually recall that almost every single verb in English can end in ing. If you're deciding whether to scamper up the tree away from the snake or down the tree away from the eagle, well, a little miserliness can be the survival edge. A quick thought can help you live to have a second quick thought. But these days we have the time and the body fat to be cognitive investors. Take a second thought for the lava under your feet. Try to step behind an issue and see how things look. Frame problems another way. Who knows, you might actually find a way out of your box. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Greetings, supervisors. My name is Christopher Fulkerson. I'm a cab driver here in San Francisco. I've been driving in San Francisco for 25 years. I earned cab medallion 43. There is no such thing as a free medallion. And I serve on the Municipal Transportation Agency's Taxi Task Force as a driver representative. I want to speak to you briefly today in general terms about a crisis that's occurring, of which you're well aware. Within the transit industry, not only nationally but internationally, and a lot of the problem has arisen right here in San Francisco due to the actions and business operations of certain companies. Those companies target the weaknesses in local communities and move in on them with allegations of entrepreneurship and so forth.
Act on it. So you will have next week as essentially a final decision point on the general plan amendment.
Thank you for that clarity. Seeing no names on the roster, Madam Clerk, on the motion to continue 1 week to the meeting of June 28, 2016, can you please call the roll?
Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
No.
Campos, no. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Aye. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, no. Supervisor Peskin.
No.
Peskin, no. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee. Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
No.
Avalos, no. There are 6 ayes and 4 noes with Supervisors Campos, Breed.
All right, this brings us to the end of our meeting. Madam Clerk, is there any other business before the board today?
No, that concludes our business for today.
Thank you, colleagues. We are adjourned.